extreme painful experience
Yeah.
that your system was not expecting. It's an extreme experience that your body, your
Yeah.
mind, your emotions were not expecting at all. And when it hits you, it shocks you.
Yeah.
And then it creates those tremors in your body. And then it takes a while then for the tremors, for your body to get back into its state.
Yeah.
And just if you imagine, for example, an earthquake.
Yeah.
You have the earthquake that hits and then it just rips through the entire community, and then there are those tremors.
Yeah.
But even after the earthquake has settled, everything is not the same anymore. Some things will still be there, some things will be completely dispositioned, shifted, and some will still be there, but they're there in a different form.
Yeah.
Even if you restore them, they're not going to be in the original form. And so there's an awareness that something extreme has happened in your system.
Yeah.
And then you've got to find a way to now work with that knowledge, which then would mean approaching life completely differently from now on going forward.
Sure. You've said quite a lot there, I think just in my head, I'm processing it, thinking that once you've been hit by a traumatic event, it's nearly impossible for you to go back to who you were. You need to move forward and almost even carry this thing with you in a way in which, makes sense, I suppose, for the future that you want to build. Is it possible for someone to say that I have never experienced trauma in my life ever? I don't know what you mean.
Well, some people have not experienced it directly on their person.
Yeah.
For example, one of the most common traumas, of course, would be, somebody getting violated, a woman getting raped, somebody getting robbed, somebody seeing a loved one being shot. Or, for example, right now you have in your Palestine and other parts of the world where there's war,
right?
Where
Yes.
there's a lot of death, a lot of extreme human experiences. And some people have not had those extreme human experiences, but they very likely would have been recipients of such behavior from other people as well. And I think that's a very important question you're asking, that if a person that has not experienced trauma, then maybe the question would be, how then do you prepare yourself for the reality that people around you probably have? What kind of awareness can you have? And more so if it so happens that you maybe get into a relationship with somebody that has trauma when you personally have not had trauma. Can you prepare yourself for the fact that they may be inconsistent, they may have unpredictable behavior, they may exhibit certain behavior that you are absolutely, to you, they make absolutely no sense. But for someone who has gone through that, they make sense because that's how a human being would behave post such an event.
I love that you are talking about how it can present itself, right? You've spoken about inconsistencies and someone who perhaps hasn't dealt with a traumatic event, someone who hasn't really processed it, is maybe in denial about the effects of that trauma in their lives. How does it present itself? I would imagine even in the workplace, perhaps you're not performing at your optimum, perhaps your interpersonal relationships as well are suffering. How does it present?
Most of the trauma behavior it presents itself in extremes. All right, there will be extreme hypersensitivity, for example, to danger.
Right.
So somebody may be paranoid. They can be extremely cynical, which means that they don't perceive any possibility of positivity out of a similar type of event that they've gone through. For example, if they've been traumatized in their relationship, let's say they really love the person, they were faithful, they were amazing, but then out of nowhere the person cheated on them and they get traumatized by that. And now they've got the extreme shock they experience creates an extreme awareness and sensitivity to potential danger that exists in relationships, and therefore then they'll have that paranoid, cynical, very cautious, overly anxious approach towards relationships. And let's say, for example, if somebody that grew up with the trauma of not having a parent around, or maybe an abusive parent, you, as a human being, you either develop an adaptive method of surviving in a very dangerous environment, which means that you learn how to then how to endure hardship, and therefore you can accept mistreatment, you can accept being yelled at, being abused, being taken advantage of, accept not having a voice in a relationship, for example, accept being told what to do, accept that you don't have you can't speak up on your behalf. All of those can be signs of trauma, although they may be linked to a bit of a personality, for example, but quite a lot of it has a lot to do with your trauma. So the moment you have a certain extreme view about something and you tend to have not a very minimal room for negotiation or entertaining any possibilities, the likelihood is that your behavior has been triggered by an extreme situation that has created that extreme way of looking at things.
I'm particularly particularly interested in the cynicism part of things, right? I mean, as you would know, that we've just come up for air following, I think, what a very, very traumatic time period for the world, not just us as South Africans, and that would be the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm wondering around, the grief element of things, linking that to cynicism, and maybe not having dealt with just how traumatic that time has been, in the sense that maybe people lost their jobs, their livelihoods, their houses, kids were taken out of school, and maybe, some of those extreme things that have happened, but also losing loved ones and at an extremely high rate, higher than normal, and not having had the time to process all of that. The effect that perhaps that could have in linking that to the cynicism that you're talking about?
Oh, well, it was absolutely linked. Let's look at it actually in this way. Normally let's say if we're experiencing a war, there tends to be at least the communities coming together to fight against the enemy.
Yes.
The challenge with COVID-19 is that all of us were in it together.
Yeah.
And then we realized that we actually became each other's potential enemies.
Yeah.
Because you carried something that could potentially harm me.
Yes.
So there's a certain level of mistrust that was presented in the environment and also in social spaces.
Yeah.
And that is why one of the behaviors that comes from that is hyper individuality.
Hyper individuality.
If you look at it on every social spaces now, people are very self-oriented.
Yeah.
There's a strong sense of me.
Yeah.
Part of it has been exaggerated by what happened in COVID-19, where you had to survive.
Yeah.
And that basically even meant as far as you had to protect yourself from against your family members who potentially carried that disease, right? And then what you also realized was that the structures that exist are not as powerful as present themselves to be. They usurping authority. They didn't have the power and the ability to contain the disease, but they took our independence away. So there's also mistrust for authority as well.
Goodness.
So it basically means that there's more and more stronger independence on who we are as people.
Yeah.
The only challenge with that is that it's making it harder and harder to collaborate and to work together.
Yeah.
Which is what we need today.
Yeah.
It has made people far more selfish and to over-negotiate for themselves, which means that if you happen to be a person that is not a very strong negotiator, then you're losing.
Yeah.
And that's why you're finding that post-COVID-19, some companies have quadrupled. They grew their income about 10 times. Some people have gone high, especially the people that understood how to survive. I started my business a year before COVID-19.
Yeah.
Understanding those type of dynamics, my business went crazy during COVID-19. By the time I came out of COVID-19, even though I'd only been a professional speaker for 2 years, including the COVID-19 year, but I was one of the speakers that actually was being in demand because I understood taking advantage of chaos,
right,
and actually coming up as the voice of order and sensibility when things are going crazy.
Yeah.
So that has not necessarily gone away. And I would say this: if somebody's listening out there and if asking themselves, how do I leverage this in terms of my relationship or even in terms of business?
Yeah.
Become that person of order and of value, and that stands out, and then you will not be hungry.
It's the Monday Boost, and we're talking trauma with Jabu Zwane, who is a mindset development specialist. And we're delving in deeper. I think you alluded to this earlier on, issues around psychological and emotional abuse. I love bringing these to the fore because I don't think a lot of people regard them as abuse, right? Yeah. People basically feel as though I must see a physical scar for me to term something abusive. But emotional abuse is very real. Psychological abuse is very real, and maybe you are suffering remnants of that kind of trauma to yourself, that you have not worked through, and perhaps you're carrying that into whatever other kinds of relationships that you might be having in your life. So let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe identifying it clearly, defining it, and also the importance of working through all of that for the betterment of self and also for others.
Yeah. Look, one of the signs of being traumatized in a relationship is that you're going to feeling a sense of powerlessness. Yeah. Restricted, where you're not able to voice your own opinion, for example, make up your own decisions. Yeah. And you're not allowed the space to do simple human things like make a mistake and learn from a mistake. Right. Grow in the process of learning whatever you're part of. For example, if you're starting a marriage, you've never been married before. You're still young at maybe married, which means that you have to give yourself time then to grow,
to adjust.
In an abusive relationship, you're not allowed to make a mistake from day one. There's an expectation that you should know how to be a wife or how to be a husband from day one. They'll tell you about this is what my father used to do, or my mother used to be, or this is what a good person, what a good wife does. The reality is that the good wife was never married to you. I'm married to you. So how do you know what it means to be a good spouse being married to you? And do you know what it means to be a good spouse being married to me? Another part of it is that there is also psychological abuse can take different forms. For example, in an abusive relationship, a person would leverage the help that they're giving you to give themselves self-advantage and put you at a disadvantage. Somebody will help you financially, and then they'll say, I gave you 20,000 rand. There's a clear expectation that you have become lesser in the relationship. With every help that's been given to you, as opposed to you feeling more valuable, you actually are feeling less, because every single help is not help, but it's actually a tool of oppression, of oppressing you. All right. It could be that I supported you while you didn't have a career. And now that you've got a career, and I'm feeling a bit jealous about it because I don't have a space of significance. I don't know how to be your husband now that you're a career woman. So instead of learning how to now be a husband of a wife who's got a career, I would rather say, don't think you're better than me. Don't forget that I made you. You wouldn't be what I am today if I didn't do anything for you. So that's part of psychological abuse. A psychological abuse is that very simple things that are part of human experiences that are supposed to enrich our relationships. They actually take away from the relationship. They create the trauma. There's a very important verse in the Bible as a Christian that I love. It says in Romans 14:5, don't let that which is good for you be spoken of as evil. So in other words, some of the great things you've done because of their good, and they actually make your relationship better. When now you are at a disadvantage, you try to find a way to leverage them for your own selfish gain, because you haven't learned ways of how, for example, to manage conflict. You know what I mean? There's a lot I can go on, but
Sure. So let's talk about, helping yourself, right, become better. I think it should be everyone's mission to better yourself, right? You should be, wanting to take care of your mental well-being, wanting to make sure that you are in a better psychological space, emotional space. And once you've identified that maybe there are certain things that you are struggling with, maybe certain blocks, if you like, there are some potholes in your journey to becoming the best version of yourself. How do we start to navigate all of that? What's our homework? What are we tasking our listener to really think about, to prioritize? Maybe if there's a list involved, what does that list look like?
Are we talking in general or in relationships?
In general.
In general.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions are crucial. It's important to learn as a human being to reflect. Quiet reflection, to investigate your life. Take a little pen and say, what is it that I'm doing that is helping my life to be better today? Right. What is it that I am good at that I should ensure that I never lose? Right.
Yes.
What is it that I'm not good at that is constantly standing on my way of achieving what I want?
Right.
Write those things down. Right. I speak a lot about being an effective communicator. A lot of people struggle in life because they don't know, first of all, how to negotiate with themselves in their minds. Listen to what I'm saying. They don't know how to negotiate with themselves with their minds because they have a poor communication structure. Two things happen. When things come out, words come out all muffled up, and you are unable to deliver your point with clarity, with accuracy, with comprehension, and to achieve exactly the precise goal you're aiming at when you start opening your mouth, right? But the other part of that is that because of the structure is also bad, it's also a bad recipient of communication. So when you're listening with you're selective in your hearing. So you're sensitive to triggers, you're sensitive to things that you think perhaps are going to hurt you, or you're looking for things to be affirmed. You are a bias conscious listener, right? So it's important to develop a good communication framework so that you can negotiate with yourself well and sort out the mess in your mind.
Yeah.
Because if the mess in your mind has no words, it has no descriptions, there's no way to explain it, or at least to explain your way out of the chaos, it will present itself in your behavior.
Yeah.
It's going to present itself in your emotions, in your relationships. I was saying earlier on today when I was doing a live that some people are incredibly amazing human beings. They're loving, they're caring, they're kind, they're all these amazing things, but they have not developed the same language of kindness, of care. They're very good at the language of fighting. So the same person who's the most amazing person will make you feel like you are the world, and then they will destroy you with words.
Sure.
Because they're amazing they know how to fight.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually putting context, putting understandable context with words of why they are the way that they are, they don't know how to do that. And so then you constantly are worried about, but why are they so kind to me if they can say the things that they're saying, right? Yeah. And they're thinking because they're doing whatever they're doing for you that it's enough, but it's not enough. Yeah. A crucial component of us as human beings is that communication component.
Absolutely.
And it is the easiest intellectual engagement that is easy for us to understand. You know, non-verbal communication is complex because I don't know why you're happy. Yeah. You could be thinking, I'm happy because I'm about to take you down. I don't know. Yeah. But the moment you put your smile to words, then I'm able to make sense of it and decide whether or not it's safe. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I'll say then develop your communication structure. And then another thing I'll say, there are a couple of things. Emotional intelligence. Yeah. Pay attention to how your emotions impact your life. Right. Is the evidence that your emotions are actually standing in your way? Attend to that. Yeah. Critical thinking. Do you have an ability to solve your own problems, or do you always have to depend on people to come and solve your problems? Ooh. If that is the case, it means that you got to take some time and learn how to become a problem solver. Yeah. And a big part of that is that pay attention to your questions that you're asking. If you're asking why me, you're not solving problems. Right. You're asking a victim framed question. But if you're saying, how do I get out of here? Yeah. Who can help? Yeah. Where can I help? Get help. That's a critical thinking question. Right. Self-leadership. Do you hold yourself to a high level of accountability? Do you expect more from yourself than you expect from other people? Yeah. If you have a high expectations from other people than you do from yourself, the likelihood is that you're going to become a miserable person to be around. Yeah. Because you're going to put high expectations on other people and judge and condemn them for what they're not doing, while you yourself don't have you don't do the same thing for yourself. You demand the same from yourself. And the last thing that I'd say, in a country like South Africa that has a high level of unemployment, with a shrinking rent buying power, with a shrinking GDP, with the per capita going down, you need to develop some kind of entrepreneurial skills. Yeah. It's crucial. It's non-negotiable these days. Yeah. And so then engaging and asking yourself, what else can I do outside of what I have right now, my salary, that can help me to sort of boost my income, so that I can actually learn to live better. And a big part of that is also learning financial literacy. Yeah. Huge problems we have in our country with a high debt ratio of 80% debt ratio to income ratio. So for every 100 rand that a South African earns, 80 rands goes towards debt. Big part of that is poor financial literacy, poor background in terms of understanding how finances work. Yeah. And that means literally how to generate income, how to grow income, how to multiply income, how to protect your income, and about how money works. Hey,
you've said a mouthful. And of course, when you're asking yourself all of these questions and you find yourself stuck in trying to find the answers, don't be afraid to go out there and seek support. There is help available. The likes of Jabu Zwane are available. And how do people reach you?
On TikTok, this is the platform that I do a lot of my content. Yeah. At Jabu Zwane Talks. That's my handle. Yeah. I do also on YouTube. I'm going to be putting a lot of stuff on YouTube in the coming times. Yeah. My website is jabuzwane.com, www.jabuzwane.com, and I'm also on Facebook, also at Jabu Zwane Talks.
Wonderful conversation indeed. Thank you so very much for your time. Look forward to inviting you back, because you've said so many things that I feel like could be topics on their own. Thank you so very much, and have yourself a good week ahead.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Our ASI Wellness Details 24/7 toll-free line 0807